Hey everyone, this is Pete, and welcome back to Atari A to Z, a series of short playthroughs of Atari 8-bit games, some which I grew up with and some which are new to me. Today's game is one of the former. Today we're looking at Neptune's Daughters, which was a 1984 release by English Software, who you've come across a few times on this series previously. Now, this game was developed by a guy called Michael Headley after a design by Ralph Frumin. There's not a ton of information about this online, and indeed I can't even seem to figure out whether there was actually a standalone retail release of this or not. The version I know of was released as part of an English software compilation called Atari Smash Hits Volume 3. This was a series of compilations that English software put out, all of which included the game Jetbook Jack, because they were very keen to push that at the time. They thought that was their great masterpiece, and so they included it in all of these compilations, along with like 4 or 5 other games. And in some cases those games had been previously released by themselves, but in others they were sort of exclusive to those compilations. So we've already seen Fire Chief on this series, for example. That was one of those games that didn't seem to come out anywhere other than this compilation. And it may well be the case for Neptune's Daughters as well. I can't seem to find any information one way or the other. So if you do happen to know, do feel free to leave a note down in the comments. Now, this is a game I rather like. It's got its own little flaws, particularly with collision detection and sort of longevity and stuff like that, but it's a game I always enjoyed, and it's got naked women in it, so fun. Very pixely naked women, I might add, before YouTube decides to age restrict this video or anything. But yeah, it's a fun, addictive game in which you play a man who apparently has gills on his neck but still needs to carry an aqualung on his back. I don't know. Anyway, let's go play Neptune's Daughters. Okay, here we are with Neptune's Daughters, programmed by Michael Headley, original game design by Ralph Frumin, copyright 1984 by the English Software Company. So I first came across this in part of a compilation. Not entirely sure offhand if it had a standard release by itself. But yeah, it's quite a fun game, and probably best to just demonstrate what it's all about. There we go. Right, so your aim in this game is you are controlling the little Aquaman, I think he's called there. And you have to make it through each screen without touching anything. And so you have access to this rapid firing harpoon thing. And you need to keep this octopus off your back. And also make sure that you're not hitting any of the weird plant life either. And you've got to do all this against the clock. So you've got to do it all before your oxygen runs out. And then you get a big bonus depending on how much oxygen you had left. After that, a few stages of that, you have this stage here. Actually, grabbing the bubbles in that stage will give you a bit of extra oxygen. Which means you can sort of actually maximise your bonus if you are careful about it. Then in this stage, you have to harpoon a crab. And carry it in here. Feed it to the sea monster. And repeat a few times. And again. All without getting stuff dropped on your head, obviously. And again, in there. Drop it in. Once you've stunned a crab, you can't fire any more harpoons. So you have to pick up that crab. However awkwardly it might be placed. And one more. I think you have to do 5. And that's the level complete. So you swim off with a naked woman. Not a mermaid, notice. No fishtail. She's just naked. And not very good at swimming. Judging by that leg movement. And then you do the whole thing again, but a bit harder. Can't actually remember how it makes it harder. With the naked women, am I right? Hey! Oh, internet. What have you done to my sense of humour? No!
So the awkward thing about this game is that when you swim downwards, your sprite becomes a lot taller. And so it's very easy to accidentally hit something just purely by your sprite changing shape so drastically. You have to be really careful not to change direction if you really don't need to. Because, for example, when you swim, excuse me, swimming past these things here, if you accidentally go vertical when you're getting through a narrow gap, that's not going to help anyone. 2 waves of these this time. Nicely done. And then this nonsense all over again. I suppose this technically counts as a boss. I don't know if there's a strict definition of a boss fight in games, but this was certainly my first encounter with a situation in a game that I would later come to recognise as a boss-like situation. I mean, you're not really fighting it as such. If anything, you're feeding it. But it's a way to close off a level. It gives each level sort of a nice bit of closure. It's a clear objective to aim for. And then we do it again. Again, still not 100% sure exactly how it makes it more difficult. I think it just makes things a bit faster. So like the octopus moves a bit faster, your oxygen drains a bit faster. Maybe these things regrow a bit more quickly. Yeah, that octopus is definitely more quick than he used to be. Maybe he recovers more quickly as well. It's still not super difficult though. Oops! Yeah, for some reason, all of the walls in this game are fatal to the touch. Take them down before they run out. Oh, 3 waves this time. Oh, we're gonna suffocate. Drown, that's the word. I guess a sensible thing to do in this part would be to try and attack them from above, because that way you can easily pick up the... Oh no! That way you can easily pick up the bubbles. I think I'm overthinking this. I just need to... Just keep shooting! Oh my god! I'm an imbecile of the highest order. Come on, this is not that difficult. There we go. Right. That's definitely still not getting any more difficult. I did always like the fact in that section there that you get that zoomed in close-up view. I just thought that was really cool. Excuse me. Because it's not something that you saw a lot in games at the time. Oops. Look. Oh no. Game over. Yeah, so in games at the time, you would tend to sort of see stuff that would stick in a single resolution for most of the time, keep the same perspective, the same colour palette, and maybe change the colour palette between levels. We talked a bit about that before, about how just a changing colour palette could feel like a big achievement at times. But yeah, to have that sort of zoomed in view to present you a different perspective on the action in this, that was really cool at the time. Even if you weren't actually really doing anything exciting when that happened, but it was pretty neat. Yeah, I've always kind of liked this game. I mean, it's not very complicated. It's not super interesting. It's not amazing to look at or listen to or anything. But it's a perfectly competent little game that does what it does pretty well. It moves smoothly. Aside from the whole changing shape when you change direction thing, the controls are nice and snappy. It always does what you expect it to, and once you get your head round that system that I was mentioning before with the changing of directions, yeah, you've got really precise control over what you're doing in this. You never feel like you're sort of fighting the performance of the computer. Which is what you want from an arcade-style game. You want smooth and slick movement at all times. Uh-oh. There we go. So yeah, thinking about it, this was probably one of the first games I played that was making an obvious attempt to tell a story. I mean, again, not a terribly complicated or interesting story, but there was a sense of narrative progression in this. I guess there's some other early games that you could say that about as well. You could say that about something like Caverns of Mars as well. That was one of the first games we looked at on this series. You could say that about that game with how you descend into the tunnels and you set the bomb and then you're flying back up things, but the fact that this game has sort of recognisable characters in it, I think kind of sets it apart from other stuff. Gives it a greater sense of human attachment. Somebody for you to latch onto and relate to. I mean, you may well relate to a spaceship for whatever reason, but for most people, dude swimming or naked lady is probably a bit more relatable than your average spaceship, but I don't know. Your mileage may vary on all that, but regardless of your thoughts on the issue, the fact that you had this sort of progression towards this final confrontation here and that when you succeeded in that confrontation, you got a little scene showing the effect of your success. Oh no! Am I going to do all that again, or does it remember where I was? No, got to do it all again. Marvellous. Simply marvellous. Oh no, he did remember. He was just very hungry. Alright, moving along. I don't actually know if there's an end to this game. I doubt it somehow. I mean, theoretically, Neptune has a finite number of daughters, but at the same time, this is a 1980s arcade-style game for home computers, which means it probably loops around forever and just gets harder and harder until you reach a point where it is literally impossible to complete a level. Because that's the usual pattern of things, isn't it? Still, it's not always about completing the game. Sometimes it's just about chasing high scores. And one of the fun things about this game is... that is one of the less fun things about this game. Yeah, one of the fun things about this game is that you do generate very high scores. In numerical terms. In fact, you get such an astronomical bonus for the amount of oxygen you have remaining at the end of a stage. Oh. Stop messing it up. Yeah, in that sense, I guess it sort of encourages you to try and go as quickly as possible, because sort of your time bonus is going to be your main way that you get the particularly high scores in this. There we go. And on to this grand finale once again. Nom 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 nom. What's for dinner, Aquaman? Crab again, I suppose? Yes. Deal with it. It's all that lives here. You're going to have crab or you're going to have octopus. And the octopus is elsewhere. So, you... Oi! Oh well, that's that. Okay. That's Neptune's Daughters. That's probably given you a pretty good overview of what to expect. And indeed, the game proceeds in much that sort of fashion for the rest of its levels until the end of time. So, anyway, hope you enjoyed that. I enjoyed revisiting that game. I do like that game. I mean, it's simple and it's limited, but I do like it. I have always enjoyed it. So, it just remains for me to say, as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again next time. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please help out the channel by leaving a like or a comment and subscribing. New episodes of Atari A to Z are on Tuesdays and Atari ST A to Z on Thursdays. Check out atariatoz.wordpress.com for a full archive. Do please also check out my other projects moegamer.net, where I explore Japanese and Japanese-inspired games from yesterday and today, and videopackgames.wordpress.com, which aims to catalogue the small but well-formed library of the Philips G7000 Videopack computer, also known as the Magnavox Odyssey 2. You can also support my work on Patreon or buy me a coffee. You can find links to do both down in the video description. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.